Hi, I'm Banoffee, and this is my Tremors interview.
So, how did you get into music to start off with?
How did I get into music? My family are like real hippies, and I went to a lot of folk music festivals as a kid. So I started off like listening to a lot of folk and country and seeing a lot of live music. So me and my sisters like made a folk band when I was a kid, and I sort of just slowly developed a taste for electronic music as I grew into my teens, and it sort of just grew from there.
I saw you were with Hazel, is your sister? Is that? Yeah. You were you were in a band together. Is that?
Yeah, we were in a folk band together, and then we took like completely opposite paths. So she first went in and worked in music business, but now she's a counselor and has a kid and has a very responsible life. And I just decided to be a child forever and like started making electronic music and moved to America and went on the solo route.
Like, what would be your criteria of success? Like for you, what is being successful in the music industry?
I think once I don't have to worry about having another job, like ever, then I'll feel good. You know, I think at the moment I go through phases where I'm like, yes, all I get to do is music and that's amazing. But I know that if I can just work a little bit harder, then this will be my career for good. And that's when I think I really would have achieved the goals I want to achieve. It's sad that like goals in art have to be about money. But it really is kind of the only thing that makes us be able to keep doing it. So it ends up being all about the financials.
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, that is also like that question about like commercialization, or if you want to be like really a true art, like, you know, stuff that you like doesn't mean that it's something that will sell. But most of the time, if you like it, someone else does. So.
Well, yeah, I've been like a really slow burn. Like I feel like that's the interesting thing about making music that isn't super poppy but also isn't like counted as like experimental music. You do have to like play the long game.
Yeah, but saying that, I do have Tennis Fan in my head for the past 2 days, so it's you have succeeded. I was literally doing the dishes the other day and I'm like, it's stuck in my head. And so I had to turn it on, so I was listening to it.
Yay, that makes me happy.
There you go. How are your first gigs? Like, so obviously you did it with your sister. So how did that go when you started off, like the very first ones?
My first ever show was a solo show actually, and it was really embarrassing because it was at this club called the Laundry in Fitzroy, and everyone came and I was like getting onto the stage, and then the manager came up to me and asked for my ID, and I was 14, and I was like, oh, I don't have one. And then they were like, you can't get on stage until you call your parents and make them come down. So then I had to like make everyone wait and go and get my parents, and like it was so embarrassing. I just remember being like gutted. But that was the first one, and there were a lot of shows like that were sort of like super young and in these sort of like club/bar scenarios. But I always loved it. It was interesting being in a band with my sister because we're super similar in a lot of ways, but she hates performing and I always loved it. She's like, it's funny, she's like better socializing than me, but I feel less fear on stage because I don't have to talk to anyone, you know. Confidence is easy when you don't actually have to interact with anyone that's in front of you.
So you and your sister, you both went your own ways. and then you started like doing your own thing. How did you go? Like,
I got a friend of mine to teach me Ableton, which is the program that I still use when I produce. And I just started playing around. I first released like a bunch of songs on SoundCloud that I'd made on GarageBand, with just like loops that were already on the program, and they were like super simple. But my sister's boyfriend at the time was really into techno music, and he got me like my first analog synthesizer and taught me how to use it a bit, and a sequencer. And so I was sort of playing around with that and learning more about electronic music and sequencing and stuff. And I ended up turning those first songs on SoundCloud into like better produced songs with a friend of mine, and released that. And it was interesting. I just sort of like watched it slowly grow. And I think I signed to Remote Control, who I'm still with at the moment, around that EP. So when I was pretty young. And yeah, I just kept doing it, and it's just like really slowly grown. It's sort of been the long road.
And so that was actually going to be my next question, was, so you're a signed artist. Is there anything specific that made you go down that path instead of like, because there's a lot of tech nowadays, and essentially, sure, you can do it, I suppose, all of it yourself. Is there something specific that you like, I prefer being signed?
I'm with 2 independent labels, so it's very different than being with a major. But I found that there was a lot of work, like when I was essentially at the start, I was self-managing as well. And I just was like, it's just so much admin, to be honest. There's a lot of stuff that I just know other people can do better than me, and I wanted to delegate. Also, PR and like self-promotion is really challenging, you know? It's hard enough to like invite people to a show, whether it be like hitting up publications and asking them to review you. You feel like a bit of a dickhead.
Yeah.
So yeah, I chose to sort of give that bit up, but it is really challenging. It's really hard to not constantly be questioning that, because it is, you know, it's sort of my baby, and it's really interesting having other people sort of chime in on what they think I should do and whatever. But I'm just lucky that I've had labels that have pretty much just let me do my own thing, and they've just helped me get it out, which is really the ideal. I haven't had anyone like taking all my money or forcing me to cut songs I didn't want to cut or anything like that. So yeah, I sort of like haven't done what people would probably think the label life is like. That's not really been the route for me. It's been always indie labels who just like love music. But yeah, it's definitely a different route.
Yeah,
it's a bit less work, which I like.
Yes, well, for sure. I mean, there is a reason why record labels are still a thing. You know, lots of they do serve their purpose. And but why do record, like, is this still a thing? Like record labels still having like bad reps? I don't know about majors and stuff, but like other like you're in the scene, so do you still hear these stories? Is that still?
Totally. I mean, I, until the pandemic, was living in LA, and you do meet a lot of young artists who have been given what they see as a big advance, which might be 50 grand or even 100 grand. And then this parking guy is looking at me badly. Do I have to move?
You're actually on a clearway at the moment.
Oh, sorry.
$165 fine.
I'm
you
like,
either get you to just turn around to the left-hand side down to Caroline Street, or the right on Caroline Street South. There is parking on both those at the moment.
Great, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Is someone going to trouble?
I thought I have to move.
No, you found a safe spot. You're good.
I'm good. I park there every day, but I guess I park there before this time. I normally am here in the morning, so.
So you were saying young artists getting those advances in LA, and they're like, oh, they've signed a sweet deal.
Yeah, people will get like 100K and think that, you know, they're loaded and that they've hit the jackpot, and then they realize that they've just signed away like 15 years of their life, which could be their entire career. You know, because people sign like minimum 3 to 5 album deals now, and they generally have 10 years on each of those releases. So if you make 3 albums, you know, and you sign when you're like, I don't know, 19 or something, you're in that deal and you're getting majority of your income taken for a long time.
Yeah.
It's people just end up getting stuck, especially because record labels are just like, sure, we'll give you these huge budgets for your videos and these huge recording budgets. And they're like, oh my God, they're just giving me money. And I'm like, no, they're not. They've given you a credit card and you just spent a shit ton of money that you owe.
Yeah.
So that's still going on a lot. And it's really sad to see, because I'm often in sessions with kids who've like just realized, and they're like, yeah, I think I fucked up. I think I'm in this for life. And I'm like, yeah, it's all right. Luckily there's publishing and stuff that can earn you money, but that's a choice that people have to make, you know. I guess the reality now in music, which makes those major deals not as bad, is no one's earning money off their royalties. Like whether you're with an indie, whether you're independent, or whether you're with a label, like generally streaming isn't where you're earning your money. And you know, I know that that's different with Tremors, so I feel okay to say that. But it's generally, you count on getting sponsorships and you count on getting a song on TV. And then that's why people are happy to sort of give away their royalties, because they're like, I don't know, I'm not really getting much anyway, so I'll just give it away and hope for the best.
And it's like, then obviously going on tour and stuff is what makes you, you know, some form of income, I guess. So
yeah.
So is there anything that you really struggled with yourself when you were like, well, then, now?
It's interesting, you know, I actually really appreciate streaming platforms because it means artists like me get heard. Because I'm not getting a huge amount of radio play, you know. Maybe in Australia on indie radio stations, and like every now and then on indie radio stations, but playlisting is where people hear me. So it's really great for that reason. I do just miss music being seen as an art form, and I think that really came with people being able to hold it in their hands like they would a painting or a book. So that has sort of been a big change that sort of is sad. Like people sort of see it as something that anyone can do, which anyone can do, and I love that anyone can do it, but it's not something that people don't put work into. And I think that the more sort of disposable music has become, the less people are appreciating like that people put their whole life into it.
I mean,
so that's been a change.
Yeah, I was gonna say, sure, lots of people can do it because it's like, you know, you just need to download an app and you can do it, but that doesn't mean they can do it well, you know. There's so
yeah, exactly. But I think that like now that you can sort of get it so easily, and you never get to hold it and like have the artwork, or you know, say like I own it, it's mine. There's something about it that has changed in the way that it is perceived, in my opinion. But thank fuck, I mean, I nearly said thank fuck touring still exists, and then I was like, oh wait a minute, I'm not so sure it does exist. But touring is what I love, so that has stayed the same until this year, and that has sort of been what's kept me in the game.
And is that so? I saw you release some vinyl, didn't you?
I did.
I'm assuming that's where it comes from.
I was really excited.
Wanting to have the music in your hands, essentially, as you said.
Yeah, it was. I actually my plan was to tour this year with the vinyl and, you know, be able to meet the people I sold it to. You know, I really like that. I love being able to like hand it over to someone and for them to have a little piece of me. I think that's really sweet. So hopefully I get to do that at some point.
Well, Yep, fingers crossed. I was going to say things were looking good like 3 weeks ago, and now it's back to what it is. So
I know.
Anyways, terrible. When you were getting into the music scene, did you have any mentors or anyone giving you like advice and stuff like that?
I had my sister who was really amazing to me, and then there was this woman called Jess Keeley who's actually Australian. She manages. Actually, she did manage Shania Twain until like a year ago. But Jesus Christ, what's the other artist she works with? Let's stick with Shania Twain for now because I can't remember her other artist, which is terrible. But she has a real passion for working with women, and she used to check in on me like once a week and just like give me advice, tell me who was worth working with, you know, what type of deals to avoid, stuff like that. So that was really useful. I spoke with her on Skype. She was living in England, and yeah, once a week I would get on the phone and she'd listen to demos and talk to me about plans and stuff, and that really helped me and got me over to the States and got me sort of working independently and believing in my music a lot more.
Is there any words of wisdom that you would share from her, or it's nothing specific?
I think the main words of wisdom she gave me is just that I didn't need anyone else to make music, which was something I never really believed in. I had male producers for a long time. I always had people sort of making decisions for me at the start. And she was like, you wrote the songs, you can produce them. You don't really need anyone else as long as you're like willing to work really hard. And that was a really good message because that sort of ended up being what I did, especially at the start when I was just like fiercely protective after being sort of stomped on by a couple of men in the industry. I just became fiercely independent and didn't want anyone to touch it.
I mean, fair enough. But yeah. And I was going to say, if you, this is a funny question, if you make it to like the biggest scenes again and you've hit your point of success, everything that you want, and every time you go on stage, every time you're touring, you can have one demand. It could be anything. It could be a bath of Skittles. It could be what would you ask for?
What would I ask for? Fresh undies and socks.
What? Before or after?
I feel like whenever I'm wearing like brand new underwear and brand new socks, I have like a lucky day, you know? So if I could have like fresh, just simple as well, just like Bonds underwear and socks, just like plain white, I reckon I'd play a better show.
Bit of product placement there as well. Done. Too easy.
Sorry.
We'll ask Bonds. No, don't worry. I'll send it to Bonds. We'll get a message from them. Cool. Amazing. Done. I won't bother you for too long.
Thank you.
All good.
That was perfect. That was actually such perfect timing. I have another meeting at 5 and it's the dot on 5.
Can I ask you to do one thing then quickly? Can you just go, hi, I don't know how you would normally introduce yourself. Do you just go Banoffee or Martha? Whichever.
Banoffee.
So then you go, hi, I'm Banoffee and this is my Tremors interview. And then you can plug it if you want with, you can catch me on social. But just do it like 2 parts if you want. So,
go?
Yeah.
You can catch me on social media at Instagram /Banoffee Music. Go check it out.